Hey everybody, I'm Dustin. So like she said, I am a developer advocate at Google. I work on Python and Google Cloud together, so basically anywhere where they interact. I'm also an organizer. I'm based in Austin, Texas, so it's really funny to be here in the Bay right now, where everyone's complaining about how hot it is, because it's way hotter in Austin right now. I organize PyTexas also, so if you're interested in coming and visiting Austin when it's not so hot, it's going to be May 16th and 17th of next year. And I also work on the Python package index. And so I'm here today to answer the absolutely most important question about the Python package index, which is how do you pronounce it? That's kind of like a weird acronym. Yeah, you call it a cheese shop if you, you know the joke. But no, the way you pronounce it is like this, PIPI. So I'm here to talk about PyPI, and specifically, I'm going to talk about what PyPI is, what it isn't, how it works from a couple different perspectives. I'll talk a little bit about technically how it works, like how the code runs, but also organizationally, like who's behind it. It's a bunch of shadowy figures. And financially, like, you know, it costs money to run. How does that work? And also, I'll give a little perspective on how I think we can improve PyPI and all these things about how it works. So to start, what is PyPI? So does anyone not know what PyPI is? Cool, awesome, glad I have this slide. So PyPI is the canonical repository for Python software. This is third-party Python software, not what you get when you type Python. That's core Python. PyPI is literally everything else. Anything that you, a lot of the things that you can import, not everything. Some things come with your standard distribution. And so it's basically, there's this like kind of well-known interview question, which is like, what happens when you type google.com in your browser, press enter? So PyPI is kind of the Python answer to this question, which is when you type pip install whatever into your terminal and press enter, what happens? Well, basically pip, this command line utility, is going to do a little bit of looking around on your computer, determine that you don't have this package that you're asking for it to install. The software doesn't exist locally. And it's going to reach out to PyPI. PyPI is at pypi.org. And it looks like this if you were to go look at it in your browser. But if pip goes out to PyPI, it doesn't look at this. It looks at something that looks like this, which looks like garbage, but that makes a lot of sense to pip. And what this is it's basically a link to every single project on PyPI. This is massive HTML page. A single page has hundreds of thousands of links on it. And if you looked at the source, it looks like this. It goes to individual project pages. If you click those links, so you have links for Django. You can follow Django, have each individual Django release and a file name at the end of it. If you look at the source for this, it links to individual files with hashes and things like that. So this is what we call the simple API. And this means that PyPI is basically actually just this huge list of links to files with really, really specific file names that pip can interpret. So it sounds like a pretty easy thing to deploy and build, right? It's like a bunch of static HTML. Cool, no big deal. Another thing that PyPI is old. So Python was kind of created around like 1994-ish, let's say. PyPI, the first commit for PyPI was in 2002. So not as old as Python itself, obviously, but it's pretty old. This is what it looked like in 2003. I think this screenshot was taken. And obviously, like, it didn't exist for a while until after Python was created. So hence why we say Python is a batteries included language, right? You didn't have any other place to get extra Python software from, so we put a lot of things in the distribution that you get when you install Python. Still though, even though it took a while for it to exist after Python itself was created, it also predates a lot of other package repositories for other languages. It's one of the oldest programming language package repositories. Some things that PyPI isn't. So this is probably a really important thing for everyone to know about PyPI. PyPI is not a collection of audited software. So the thing that you get when you type Python, everything you get in the standard library, that's more or less audited, right? You have some core developers that work on it and they put that into the standard library and they sort of sign off and say, yeah, this all makes sense. PyPI is kind of like the Wild West. Anybody, any of you in this room can put any software that you want up on PyPI. Now, I don't encourage you to put like malware or spam or anything like that, but there's not really anything stopping you from doing whatever you want. It's an open repository for software. So in that sense, it's kind of like GitHub, right? Like you can put anything you want on GitHub. PyPI also, though, isn't literally GitHub. So some languages, for example, if you looked at the Go documentation, Go, when it was created, their way to do package repository for third-party software is basically, hey, just go put it on GitHub, and our installer will know to just go to GitHub and get it from there. So they sort of just sidestepped this whole thing of like, we need a repository for third-party packages by just saying, well, hey, GitHub exists, let's just use that. So PyPI is not GitHub. It's its own thing. It stands alone. And it's also, it's an organization, but it's also not a for-profit organization. So some languages, unlike Go, like the JavaScript ecosystem, have a for-profit organization that maintains and runs their software repository. So for JavaScript, this is NPM. And NPM is a company. They have $10.6 million in VC funding. They have like 60, depending on when you count, 60 employees. So yeah, they're like trying to make money off of basically the same thing, about being a package repository. So you might be looking at this and be like, okay, so PyPI is not a for-profit, but NPM is for-profit. Like, okay, I'm gonna go, I see a market here. I'm gonna go make my own PyPI, I'm gonna make a for-profit, I'm gonna make a ton of money, right? All right, so I'm gonna tell you how to do this. So just go ahead, I don't care, let's see. So 5 easy steps, I'm gonna tell you how to make a PyPI. So the first thing you need to do is define some APIs. So I talked about the simple API earlier, that's the HTML. That's what pip talks to. There's some other APIs too. So you need to be able to upload code. There's an upload API. It's just a single endpoint /upload where packages get sent to from the maintainers. There's also some like JSON, XML, RPC APIs for doing other stuff, inferring stuff about PyPI and its status. There's also a web UI. So this is like if you need to log in, reset your password, all the like logged in views and stuff. This is the web UI for PyPI. So those are the APIs. Second, you need to implement them. So here's what I'd recommend. This is what we did for PyPI. It's Python 3. It's Pyramid, which is a lesser known web framework, but a really solid one. We use Postgres and Redis just like everybody else. Kubernetes, of course. Just a little bit, excuse me, just a little bit of JavaScript and CSS. And then once you've implemented it, you need to put that all behind a big honkin' CDN, a content distribution network. Because the thing about being PyPI is that PyPI is super popular. So this is a graph showing the last year of requests and bytes transferred. PyPI served 160 billion requests in the last year and almost 2 petabytes of data. And that's growing, those graphs are going up. So if you were to look at our like real-time dashboard right now, you'd see we're getting like 6,000 to 7,000 requests per second on average. So that's a lot. It's a lot of that bandwidth is served by our CDN. I'll talk more about that later. But it's one of the big things about being PyPI is that it needs to handle this kind of traffic. It also needs to handle a lot of storage. So we don't delete anything from PyPI. So our repository just gets bigger and bigger. So right now it's at about almost 7 terabytes of software exists on PyPI, and we store all of that. Okay, so step 4, and then you profit, right? So that's how to build a PyPI. But really, in actuality, this is what it's like. Step 4 is try to make that sustainable. Try to keep it running. And 5 is hope that you break even, right? We're really hoping that PyPI is not in the red here. So let's talk about technical sustainability first. I'll talk about some other things afterwards. So for me, when I'm designing something that I want to break even and to keep running, there's a few things that I try to hit. So those are longevity, maintainability, transparency, evolvability, and scalability. So in terms of how this relates to PyPI, so for longevity, PyPI needs minimal maintenance. There's not a lot of people that work on it. So it needs to basically be able to run on its own and not require a lot of supervision. It needs to be maintainable, so when it does break, which does happen, we need to be able to fix it. It needs to be transparent, so anyone should be able to walk up and fix a problem or work on PyPI. It needs to be evolvable, so it needs to be able to adapt to our changing ecosystem, not just Python, but software in general. And it needs to be scalable. Like I said, it has a lot of load. It needs to continue to handle increasing load. So for technical sustainability, one of the things that I think is important for PyPI, we use the latest and greatest. So this means that we use Python 3, we use the latest dependencies. We actually have a bot that will auto-update all of our Python dependencies to the latest one, and we upgrade pretty quickly. Latest releases, and this lends towards longevity and evolvability, right? So basically, we don't want PyPI to ever be in a place where it hasn't been updated in a really long time, and no one wants to go and update a bunch of dependencies and upgrade the Python version, and then blah, 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 blah. We want that to happen very smallly and incrementally. However, that means we also don't want to use anything super weird. So we don't want to use a library that people don't really know how to use, some weird database that no one uses in the real world, because we want it to basically be approachable to anybody and maintainable by anybody. Transparency, the easiest way to be transparent for us, everything is open source, right? PyPI is completely, aside from API secrets or whatever, totally open source. And another thing that sort of lends towards maintainability is having a strong local development experience. So one of the things we really prioritize is making it easy for developers to come and work on PyPI. I can get you up and running with PyPI with just Docker on your local computer in like 3 minutes. It's super easy. And that includes databases, everything else. It's all really nice. And also tests. Tests really lend towards sustainability. And for us, that means a lot of tests. And actually, PyPI has 100% test coverage, which most people, when you tell them, I have 100% test coverage, they're like, yeah, but your test coverage is essentially the equivalent of doing this, right? Just because your tests are passing doesn't mean you've found all your bugs. And that's true. I'm not saying that PyPI is bug-free. However, having that much test coverage helps us identify what is going to break if we change something. So PyPI is dependent on by so many people. We need to make sure that we can make changes and we don't break any kind of backwards compatibility. We're not introducing some weird edge case. So test coverage helps us there. It also sort of increases the amount of work you have to do to create a new feature. So PyPI, we don't want it to like evolve all these weird appendages, right? We want to be careful and thoughtful about adding new features. And having lots of tests, making sure everything is well tested also helps with that. Another thing, PyPI is designed to be super read-heavy and cacheable. Sort of by its nature as a package repository, it's read-heavy. But we especially focus on this, and this helps with sustainability a lot. And PyPI is also relatively resilient to downtime. So like I said, not a lot of people work on it. A lot of people depend on it. So if PyPI goes down, and I have taken PyPI down before, it needs to basically continue working for everyone in some way. So if PyPI goes down, because it is so read-heavy, because it's behind a CDN, you might not even notice if it's broken for a little while, unless you maybe try to release a new package. All right, so I said not a lot of people work on PyPI, and I said we're not a for-profit, so like, what are we? Who is behind PyPI? So PyPI itself is a project of the Python Software Foundation, which is a nonprofit. So that kind of makes PyPI a nonprofit as well. And PyPI is run by a team almost entirely of volunteers. So no one is really actually paid to work on PyPI, because we know how sustainable depending on volunteer labor is. So okay, quick poll. How many people do we think have the commit bit for PyPI? Who thinks it's more than like 20 people? Who thinks it's more than 10 people? How about more than one person? Okay, so the answer is 6 people. 6 people have the ability to change code on PyPI, merge pull requests, that kind of thing. That was actually 3 people until very recently. How about how many people have, in the existence of PyPI, contributed to it? So I'm going to say since 2015, because there was sort of a change, and so we had different contributors to PyPI since 2015. How about, who thinks this is like more than 500 people? How about more than 200 people? Okay, how about more than 100 people? Yeah, this is about 200 people. But I was talking to Mahmoud earlier, and he was telling me some statistics about PyPI, which I didn't know. And so he had this statistic, which is how many people have contributed approximately 90% of the code base to PyPI. So we have a long tail of contributors. There's a lot of people that come by and make maybe a single commit or change one line of code. And that's fine. Those are valid contributions as well. The answer to this question is about 12 people. 12 people have contributed to 90% of what the code base behind PyPI actually is. So there are 3 people who are administrators. These are people that keep an eye on PyPI. And these are all people that are kind of sort of paid to spend some of their time to work on PyPI. So myself is included here. We have some maintainers. These people are occasionally working on PyPI, but not consistently. And they also have the ability to merge pull requests once in a while. And then we have moderators. So we have a couple more people here. And they triage issues. They respond to, like, oh, hey, this thing is spam on PyPI, whatever. And then we have, like I said, contributors. We have about 200 individuals. And that's it. So this means that basically the people that are working on PyPI, either someone's company is paying them to work on open source, and we got lucky that they chose to work on PyPI. Someone is unemployed and bored. possibly because they spent too much time working on open source at their previous job, or someone is just like not getting enough sleep and they're doing both. I've been all three of these, right? And none of those are really that sustainable, to be honest. So let's talk about another thing, financial sustainability. So like I said, PyPI handles several billion requests, transfers terabytes of information. So you can donate to PyPI. I could like ask you all right now to go and donate if I wanted to. The thing about that, while those donations are really meaningful, they're not that significant for PyPI. So this is how much we get in individual donations, about $250 a month, $3,000 a year. That's like a reasonable chunk of change. Most of what we use and need to run PyPI comes from in-kind donations from sponsors. So these are things like for metrics, Datadog gives us free metrics, Sentry gives us alerting, Elastic gives us search. We use AWS and GCP for various compute and storage things. Our CDN is Fastly. And the thing to note here is, like I said before, we get about $250 a month of individual donations. Anyone want to guess what our Fastly bill was last month? It was about $250,000. This means that PyPI costs like about $2.5 million a year to run, and we get $3,000 in donations. So I want to give a huge shout out real quick to Fastly. I don't work there. They are just awesome, and we really appreciate all their support for PyPI. So another thing that we do to supplement all this, right? Sometimes we just need to do development work, right? And no one's getting paid to do that. So we do grants and awards, and we didn't actually start doing this until pretty recently. So about a year ago, we sort of identified that we had a problem. So this is the screenshot I showed of PyPI in 2003. This is it in about 2008. And then this is it in 2018. Like kind of actually, these two look pretty similar. And the thing is, not a lot changed here in terms of PyPI. It looks the same, it behaves pretty much the same. But one thing that definitely changed in those intervening 10 years is the number of packages on PyPI. We went from less than 3,000 to more than 140,000. And that growth is not linear, right? That's getting even faster. So basically, the code base was pretty stagnant and it wasn't going anywhere. And we needed to do a full stack rewrite because PyPI was created at a time when we didn't have a lot of Python packages. It basically was totally independent. It couldn't depend on itself. And so it was a little bit of a wild code base. So we decided we were going to rewrite it. In about 2015, Donald started rewriting PyPI. And for about 3 years, we got about 50% of the way there. We had a code base pretty usable, but we decided that we needed sort of a big push to put us over the edge to finish all the development work that needed done and actually do the launch. So what we did is we applied for a grant. We went to Mozilla. Mozilla has this open source awards grant program. And we successfully applied and received a grant from them. So this was about $170,000. It paid for 3 people to work full-time on PyPI for 4 months. And in 4 months, we took that code base, which is about half done, and turned it into the new PyPI that y'all use every day now. Like I'm assuming people are using this pretty much every day. So that kind of shows $170,000 in 4 months with just 4 people finished a full stack rewrite of PyPI, this critical piece of infrastructure. And it was pretty successful, right? Like the launch went relatively smoothly. It didn't break a bunch of stuff across the entire ecosystem. Awesome, thanks. So yeah, we just considered that a success. And it was finished in April of this year. And so after that success, we decided to, well, let's keep repeating that. So we applied for another grant. So the Open Technology Fund is an organization that gives out funding for various internet freedom projects. And PyPI definitely falls in this category. So we applied for a grant, we got it, they gave it to us. And as a result, we did some security, accessibility, and internationalization improvements to PyPI. And so this is a grant of about $80,000. We're about to wrap up this project right now. And this has given us some really great features that basically they required a person to work dedicated on this feature for a finite period of time. We can't just like on the weekend come and do this feature. So one of the features was we added two-factor login. So now on PyPI, you can do two-factor TOTP with your phone, the code, or you can do like hardware keys as well. It also added API tokens. This is like a really highly requested feature for PyPI that we basically had to get right the first time, because once we add this feature to PyPI, lots of people are going to start depending on it, and we want it to work correctly. So the OTF fund allowed us to do this project, think about it, implement it correctly, ship it quickly, have it done. So this is also, so far, it's almost, all these things are in beta right now, but it's been relatively successful. And we're just basically going to keep doing this. So we also got an award from Facebook recently. This is to do cryptographic signing for packages on PyPI and launch that. We haven't started yet, so we'll eventually be looking for contractors to come and work on this project with us. And yeah, we're just going to keep doing this. It works pretty well, gets development work done, and adds new features and helps evolve PyPI. Maybe that's not enough for you though. Maybe you actually want more sustainability, right? You're really worried about Fastly, going for their IPO and then deciding they don't want to spend money on all open source projects anymore. So you're really concerned about that. And that's a valid concern. Maybe you actually want a for-profit PIPI. You want maybe PyPI to become for-profit. Like maybe you think people would like to pay for PyPI and PyPI should start accepting money from them, and maybe that would make them more sustainable. So it's an interesting problem, and a lot of people talk to me about this. Maybe we'd add things like private repositories or on-site mirrors, custom pro badges. Anyone seen these on GitHub recently? We could auction off like really cool package names. All ideas for how to make a for-profit. I'm mostly joking here, but it really is an interesting idea. Like PyPI is kind of unique in the sense that it's not charging anyone for its service. So there's some challenges. I want to address them just really quickly. So one is kind of a challenge to our nonprofit status. Since the PSF is a nonprofit, PyPI kind of is a nonprofit project. If we start making a profit, that kind of, in the eyes of the IRS, that might be problematic. Another is our donated services. So Fastly might not be super interested in donating all that infrastructure to PyPI if we're starting to charge money. They might decide, hey, we're going to pull out. And suddenly PyPI has to start making up the difference and paying that bill. Another is the current ecosystem. So there's a whole ecosystem of third-party tools that solve a lot of these existing problems. Like if you want to run your own PyPI mirror, you can use Bandersnatch or DevPy or something like that. And if PyPI decides that we're going to charge for all these things and we're going to do it for profit, kind of shoos away the rest of that ecosystem that's been built up around PyPI. Another is volunteers. Like I said, PyPI is almost entirely volunteer-driven. Volunteers are okay volunteering when a project's not making money, but if it starts making money, they kind of maybe expect it. This is a job, I'm getting paid for this, hopefully. So they don't want to work for free for a for-profit. So maybe our volunteers would go away. And another is just generally the transition, right? How to turn something that's nonprofit into a for-profit is just challenging in general. Another thing is like maybe a for-profit package index doesn't actually make sense. So if folks have been paying attention to sort of, I spend too much time reading about package indexes, but NPM is having a lot of problems lately. They're maybe not actually making a profit, and there's job cuts and stuff like that. And actually, this is a funny headline, so I included it, but NPM uninstall co-founder. Their co-founder just left. So, it's not all of like the grass is always greener kind of thing here, I guess. All right, so if you want more sustainability, one thing you could do is just donate. So like I said, you could donate your money. We don't get a lot of donations, individual donations, but you could do it, and we do appreciate it, and we do use it. But more importantly, you could donate your time. So this might be actually coming and contributing, writing code, but it also could be grant writing, grant discovery, project management. If you are an independent contractor, you can come be a contractor on a very specific project that's been project managed and outlined. Front-end work, all this kind of stuff. It's all stuff that we really need, that most people don't, when they look at PyPI, think is what would help it be sustainable. So if you're interested in any of those things, come and talk to me afterwards. Be really happy to bring you onto the team. So thanks, everyone.
Hello? Does anybody have any questions? All right.
Hi. Any movement towards audited packages?
Any momentum towards audited packages? Okay. Let me reiterate. There's 140, 170 now, I think, thousand packages on PyPI. So basically, the answer is, well, it's impossible to audit all of them, right? We could do some fun machine learning things, do some analysis of what a package is doing. But really the question is like, what do you want out of an audited package? Do you want to know that it's bug-free, that it's free of malware, that it's not going to steal your crypto wallet, whatever? There's a lot of possibilities there, right? So different people want different things out of package auditing. So yeah, it's possible in the future we would have some team of auditors that can like sign off on a package. But I guess the question is, what goal does that serve, right? Do you trust this team of random people? Do you trust whoever signed off on that package? Like, you should probably do the auditing yourself, is what I'd say.
So on that note, though, you mentioned that you have two-factor authentication for PyPI now, right?
Yeah.
So is there a way for me to say I only want to get a package if the person who uploaded it used two-factor?
Really interesting. So the question was like, okay, now we have two-factor. Can I only install packages that their maintainers use two-factor authentication? You would be able to install a very small percentage of PyPI if you do that. But yeah, that's an interesting idea. I think what you probably would actually want is, once we implement some sort of cryptographic signing for packages, some way to verify that the person who's uploaded it is actually, that's what they've uploaded and they agree that that's what should have been uploaded. So maybe that doesn't quite answer your question.
No, how would you manage keys for cryptographically signed packages?
Let's take that out. Yeah, yeah. So package signing, not the holy grail. We can talk about that outside.
So actually, you used to be able to sign packages. But just on the other question, I know that there was work being done in the community for supply chain, so verified supply chain, which isn't the entire answer, but it's at least you can say, you know, like a lot of companies can't go and hit PyPI directly. They have to import it and do some internal verifications, but they want to be able to at least track that from the developer's fingertips to, you know, installed bits on your thing. The one project I'll point you at is on GitHub. It's from Microsoft. It's called Oryx, O-R-Y-X, I think. It's part of their initiative there. It's an open source project to do verified supply chains.
Cool. Yeah, I'll also add, there is package hashes. So on upload, you compute a hash, PyPI will verify that hash. The hash is included. You can also add those hashes to your requirements files. So you can verify that if you trust PyPI, that the hash that you get from PyPI is the same as when you first install that package, and you're not getting something the next time you go to install it.
I wanted to float a suggestion over here.
Where are you? Oh, okay. There.
Would you consider auctioning off the names of the libraries as real estate, like websites?
Well, actually, yeah, that was one of the like fake ideas for how to make money off of PyPI.
I think it's a great idea.
So, yeah, PyPI has a global namespace, which means that there's a lot of like name squatting that's happening, unlike GitHub, right? So there's only one request project. There's only one Django. So we're not going to auction them off, but there is a process for like unlocking squatted or invalid names. So if there's actually a name that you specifically want, there's a process for that, and I can show you how to do that. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dustin, for your time.
Thanks.